Hello friends, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. Dear friends, with our ongoing series on disaster management, today we are going to talk on disaster, vulnerability and risk mapping. And for this discussion, we have with us in our studios Professor R.B. Singh. Professor R.B. Singh is a professor of geography and he is teaching in Department of Geography, Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. Dr. R.B. Singh, Professor R.B. Singh has immense experience and he has contributed a lot in the area of academics. He has published and authored numerous books and number of his articles have been published in reputed journals both at national and international level. Friends, if you want to ask questions from Professor R.B. Singh on today's topic, then do call us through our toll-free number. Our number is 1800-110-430. I repeat, our number is 1800-110-430. All friends are requested to call in the last 10 minutes of the lecture so that first you could have in-depth knowledge on today's topic, and yes, in the last 10 minutes we promise to give answers to your questions through Professor R.B. Singh. Let's welcome our guest Professor R.B. Singh and let's try to understand today's topic in detail. And the topic, again I'm telling you, is disaster, vulnerability and risk mapping. Let's welcome our guest Professor R.B. Singh once again. Hello sir, welcome to the lecture.
Thank you Gitika ji. Welcome viewers. Today we are going to discuss a very important component of disaster management, disaster vulnerability and risk mapping. There are three key words such as vulnerability, exposure and risk. It is very important to understand these important component of risk in order to promote disaster resilience. In this context, I would like to bring important areas of information, data, new type of techniques like geographic information system, remote sensing, global positioning system, how these all in combination we can call as a geospatial technology can play a very important role for disaster risk reduction. As you know, understanding disaster risk has been a very important component and priority by the Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction. March 2015 brought before us a very important resolution by the global UN community, what it is known as Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction. Disaster risk DRR, very popularly known as DRR, is expressed as a likelihood of loss of life, injury or destruction and damage of property, environment and resources due to impact of a disaster of a given period of time as per UNISDR Global Assessment Report 2015. Disaster risk mapping aims to enhance or improve our understanding about disaster risk to vulnerable community resulting from exposure to hazards. And so in this context, I would like to bring before you the role of new technology, particularly the geographic information or very popularly known as geospatial information technology, in combination of or integrating GIS, remote sensing and GPS. And in combination, this technology offers possibility to improve the analysis of disaster risk as they have become popularized and accessed worldwide over a period of time. Result of risk mapping are usually presented in the form of maps that shows the magnitude and nature of risk. So maps are the a reflection of the reality represented in a spatial and temporal form, and it is an art of science and even the I would like to bring before you in this case of or relating with disaster risk human geoscience. So, it is a very important technology of human geoscience, and it can bring a lot of change in the society through improving our understanding. Now, question arises, what is risk mapping? Risk mapping is a process of establishing the spatial and temporal context of risk, combining information on probability and consequences. Risk mapping requires combining maps of hazard, exposure and vulnerability function. These are the three important different functions. The result of risk mapping are usually presented in the form of maps that show the magnitude and nature of risk. And if you will be able to know this magnitude and nature, I think a preventive measures can be taken up. It is very important to bring before you important definition in this context, particularly defining the exposure, vulnerability and risk. And particularly for that, I would like to take an important definition coming from UNISDR. As you know, UNISDR is recently organized also the Science and Technology and Global Forum on Disaster Resilience at Tokyo. So, I would like to take up the few important. I quote, exposure, people, property, system or other elements present in hazard zone that are thereby subject to potential losses. Vulnerability, vulnerability can be defined as the characteristics of circumstances of a community, system or asset that make it susceptible to damaging effects of a hazard. In probabilistic and qualitative or quantitative risk assessment, the term vulnerability expresses the part of percentage of exposure that is likely to be lost due to the certain hazards. Now, we have a very important term, resilience. As you know, International Council for Science, that is the highest scientific body, through this IRDR and then UNISDR. So, representative of UN Secretary General Dr. Robert Glazer also was recently in Tokyo, and we discuss about the disaster resilience, how the resilience building can be done all over the world by improving our understanding, by bringing some important techniques and a very suitable and how participatory methods can be developed so that people loss of life can be saved. So, resilience, again I am taking from the UNISDR terminology, the ability of a system, community or society exposed to hazards to resist, absorb, accommodate and recover from the effects of a hazard in a timely and efficient manner, including through the preservation and restoration of its essential basic structure and function. As you know, we have two very important, when talking geoscience point of view, two functions, landscape structure and landscape potential. Landscape potential and landscape structure, these are interlinked, and resilience building should take into consideration of these phenomena. Risk. Risk is a combination of consequences of a event. And what type of event? Hazardous event. And the associated livelihood, probability of its occurrence. This is coming from the ISO, And so, combining all these things, we can do the risk assessment. So sometime, without going to the vulnerability exposure, we start working on the risk. For understanding risk, it is very important to understand vulnerability and exposure. Risk assessment. Risk assessment is the overall process of risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. Now I would like to take this all three in a more holistic way or more integrated way: exposure, vulnerability, and risk, particularly in the Sendai framework of. The Sendai framework of the DRR highlights that, I quote, policy and practices for disaster risk management should be based on an understanding of disaster risk in all its dimensions of vulnerability, capacity, exposure of a person and assets, hazard characteristics, and the environment. Such knowledge can be leveraged for the purpose of pre-disaster risk assessment. And so that is why, what you are getting here, another very important term that is known as capacity. Capacity of individual. If we can improve the capacity, there is a say, it is a mud killing the people and it is a cement saving the people. Who own the mud houses? Mud houses are, owned by the poor people. They do not have capacity, to build the houses. So they are the more sufferer, more victim, and so that is why capacity of individual, improving the capacity of individual is a very, very important for aspects of the policy makers. And here the question coming to science policy interface. How scientific community can identify the vulnerability, exposure elements, and assess the risk and communicate to the policy making. Linkages. Risk, exposure, and vulnerability. Exposure and vulnerability should address how to promote a common understanding of exposure and vulnerability as fundamental element of risk assessment. So very integrated way. Partnership of the scientific community, policy makers, and community representative across discipline and policy sectors in order to reduce disaster losses in lives, livelihood, and health by 2030. Why 2030? 2030 is demarcated by Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction. 2030 is also, sustainable development goals agenda. 17-point agenda should be filled. Disaster is an interactive area within sustainable development goals. It is very important for scientific community to see such type of the linkages or interactive elements. Elements of effective risk exposure and assessment. Identify the linkages between social, under social may be literacy, may be education, biophysical may be the land use system, forest cover, built environment like a building structure, material of building, that is also very important. We do not give much importance, but when we are living in an era of climate change, material of building is also very important. That because then they are producing risk. Identify need for improved understanding and local models for community resilience. Single model cannot be suitable for every situation. every environment, and so different models can be promoted, and such model should be based on community knowledge, talents, materials and resources available. Identify exposure databases and exposure models emphasizing issue of scale, data access, type of data and integrated analysis. So, these elements are an very important tool for effective risk assessment. For assessment, a strengthening of baseline data is very important. So, better data, better risk assessment. If we are bringing the garbage in our system, we will have a garbage result. Periodically assess disaster risk, vulnerability, capacity, exposure, hazard characteristics and their possible effect on society. This is very much needed, and it has lot of implication for development, and so sometimes these are very, very important to integrate with development planning also. Incorporate geospatial information technology for updating and disseminating local specific sensitivity, vulnerability and exposure analysis and information. And for what? For decision makers, for policy makers, the general public and for the community at risk. It is very important to understand exposure mapping. Most of the time we ignore exposure elements. What are these? These are the following: population in terms of poverty, exposure or vulnerability; buildings in terms of their structure, type, like mud houses, wood framed houses, concrete framed houses, steel framed houses. So, which one is more resilient? Maybe the cemented, concrete or the steel frame. And functionally also very important in order to analyze functional element. What may be the functional element? Residential area, commercial area, industrial area, public space. You know, after the Habitat 3, public space was debated very adequately, and it has very, very important to require careful geographical inquiry. Livelihoods. What may be the livelihood? Immediate livelihood surrounding to a house in rural area is a livestock. Most of the time we ignore livestock. A special need of livestock is very, very important. So, livestock, we have a lot of a scheme for people, property, but we ignore the livestock. Livestock vulnerability assessment should be integrated in this for disaster, because these are the very important asset of resilience building. Crops, industry, the location of industry is very important. Extent of exposure is very important. Then critical facility like a health care, including hospital, clinics, basic health unit, educational institution, school, children, they are more vulnerable. As you know, even case of the air pollution at present, who are the more sufferer? We analyze the data and we collected the dispensary wise data, and we found that we have the more death due to air pollution for children, for older people. Then infrastructure, roads, bridges, airport. I would like to bring before you another very important, underground. Underground metro area, air does not circulate. We are not giving much emphasis on that. I think the policy makers should require to examine these aspects, risk assessment within, subway, underground markets. Disaster risk drivers. Improving the understanding of vulnerability need to be seen as a foundation of disaster risk reduction and management. In this regard, I would like to certainly bring before you the important contribution coming from the IRDR, Integrated Research on Disaster Risk, that is a joint program of International Council of Science and UN Office of the Disaster Risk Reduction. Recently, they organized a meeting at Tokyo, Science Council of Japan. Also, they established a research project. It is very important to mention to encourage forensic investigation. Forensic investigation of disaster, that is known as FORIN, a research framework that focuses on investigation of root causes of disaster risk. So, two key organizations, International Council for Highest Scientific Body and UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, they have this very important program. Now, through this diagram, I would like to discuss with you what are the important, area where this risk mapping can be used. We can use in early warning system, or emergency responders can be used, particularly disaster response forces. We have 6 battalion disaster response forces all over the country. They can use this. We can use such type of mapping for hazard identification. We can use for communication. Such map can be used by the institution or local government for prioritizing the problem, because we have many problems and we have limited resources, so we have to prioritize the problem. We can use such maps for evacuation plan and also for recovery, particularly if you have some idea about the livelihoods or the health components where we have more risk. I think the recovery point of view also very, very important. So, risk assessment and integration of resource data. So, resource mapping is a very important component of disaster risk mapping also. The assessment of vulnerability and exposure range from global to local scale participatory approaches, and these all need to be integrated. So, what we have to do? We have to upscaling the information, downscaling the information, and deep scaling the information. So, scientifically upscaling, downscaling and deep scaling needed in this context. The appropriateness of methods used for these assessment depends on purpose of analysis, time and geographic scale involved. If we are macro level, means the very Himalayan scale we are doing, or maybe the catchment scale, a small water scale. So, it varies. Number and type of actors, stakeholders, economic and governance factors. So, who can do integration? In India, agency like National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, District Disaster Management Authority collect data at different level apart from some different government department, and resource data coming from the different conventional and unconventional sources. Conventional, I would like to census data, maybe population related data, economic activity related data, a statistical handbook at the district level, and if you will come to the micro level, even the Lal Kitab, Khasra Khatauni, these type of the can give also the lot of data. Various centers from different parts of the country in cooperation with their corresponding main district management agency, also they are generating, and data statistics are studied in a multiple dimension. Very briefly, I would like to touch also mapping architecture. There is need to improve our understanding of map elements. What are these elements? Map types and grids, elements, point, line, area, map symbols, color combination, text on maps, map features, design, map key, map scale, map convention, map template. These are the very important elements while preparing a map. You see here, GIS database can integrate a spatial database, non-spatial database. A spatial database coming from point line area, then non-spatial coming hierarchical data, network data structure, relational data structure. And this all can be overlaid under the GIS framework. This can be done using the various module under GIS, ArcInfo, or even within ArcPass, geospatial, GIS spatial environment, take into consideration of soil map, soil texture, soil unit, agroecological, various type of land use. So in this context, a spatial dimension is very important. Impact of disaster depends strongly on the level of exposure, and exposure varies according to space to space. So temporal and spatial space very important, because in this way we can contribute to the demographic, governance or geographic aspects. Use of predominantly statistical data gathered from satellite, published record, also very good. Now I would like to bring one example here. Developing and providing topographical information useful for disaster emergency. Our disaster response force, such type of information can be they use about the height, altitude, elevation, the different type of the infrastructure available. Here you can see. And now the drone, unmanned aircraft offer a new tools for disaster response. Aerial photographs, color aerial photographs can brief a lot of a communicated data, automated flight patterns, real-time data can be generated, and finally I can tell you the drone can be very efficiently used. Land use, land cover, that is the everything. Land use and land cover is not only a physical, chemical and biological processes of the earth system, but the human responses, societal responses. Through land use also you can understand the mind of the people, how they are responding to different type of the changes like globalization, climate change, how they are changing the cropping pattern. Such data also can be very much useful for disaster resilience building. Thank you very much.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a productive session. And friends, we would be meeting after a very short break and would be discussing further on disaster and disaster vulnerability. Hello friends, welcome back to this session, and you know that we are talking on disaster management. In this session specifically, we are going to talk on multi-hazards mapping and Indian case studies. And for this discussion, we have with us in our studios Professor R.B. Singh. Dear friends, if you want to ask questions from Professor R.B. Singh, then you can call us through our toll-free number. Our number is 1-800-110-430. I repeat, our number is 1-800-110-430. So let's welcome our guest, Professor R.B. Singh, and let's try to understand more and more on the topic. Hello, sir. Welcome to the lecture.
Thank you, Geeta ji. Welcome, viewers. Multi-hazard mapping is a very important component of disaster risk mapping, and most of the time we do, particularly in developing country, hazards or disaster occur not only one disaster but maybe in combination of several other disasters. A particular space has many types of disasters. So we can do a combined, a study, and so that is why I would like to put before you also an integrated assessment, multi-hazard mapping, and several examples I would like to bring before you from different sectors and different type of disasters. So why we need? We need to improve our understanding about the complex disasters, complex places, or critical disaster areas. I would like to use the word critical disaster areas or a space. I would like to use here word, we are getting low probability and high impact disaster. What happened in Mumbai? What happened few months back in Gurgaon? Very low probability. There was no probability in Chennai. Very long time such type of the disaster occurred. So we have low probability but high impact because people are not aware. So what we need? We need our extraordinary efforts, and so improvement of science-based analysis is very, very important to share knowledge for decision making. Research should be undertaken on assessment of complex disaster. This is another very important dimension I would like to bring before you. We do not care this. Complex disaster mechanism on which concentration of events leading to technological disasters triggered by natural hazards. If something happened to earthquake, I think it can affect the Tehri Dam, and through Tehri Dam we can have a big devastation. What happened in Fukushima? Tsunami occurred. Tsunami impacted on Fukushima nuclear power plants, and what? You see? So triggered through tsunami, earthquake, tsunami, and then what happened? We face the big problem of technological disaster like a Fukushima. I think we have many such type of the plants, and I think a very important measures need to be taken by the policymakers. Disaster data, a participatory approach. Here I would like to crowdsourcing, and my main objective is to involve community in this process. In very low probability and the high impact type of disaster, government can't do anything only. We all have to participate in this process. And who can take such participation? I think government has to initiate this process. So what I would like to change the scenarios, people used to say people's participation. I would like to say government participation. Policy maker participation in the people's program. Then we can have such type of the data, disaster data, what I would like to call a participatory approach. Community based crowdsourcing, bottom up, versus a statistical based, top down, and then we can through a geospatial technology we can go to deep scaling. So you can see top down, bottom up, and through GIS, GPS and remote sensing in combination can play a very important role for deep scaling. And so we can contribute to resilience, community engagement, ownership, mapping of vulnerable groups. We also neglect vulnerable groups. Who are the vulnerable groups? Women. A special need of women, that is a very, very important during the disaster. We do not care much. What are the special need of the women? Livestock, we do not care. These are the special need. Old people, children, these are the poor people. Those do not have, if rich people, they can migrate to their relative in other area. But where they will go, poor people? Some they can use the seed, if rich people. But those who do not have any type of land, what type of seed they have? So I think here I would like to tell before you a very important, vulnerability collected from the village household. How these policy makers, I think they should focus on panchayat level. Vulnerability components I have taken and major subcomponent like adaptive capacity, socio-demographic profile of the people, livelihood strategy, social network, natural capital. Then we can do also sensitivity analysis. And for what sensitivity? Health sensitivity, food sensitivity, water, basic need of the people, exposure, people, critical infrastructure, other elements, everything present in the disaster prone areas, maybe the exposure elements. Exposure and vulnerability information to develop indicators, and so already we discussed this, but what I would like to put, these all can be used as a indicator, risk indicators. Now you can see we have collected data like for 3 time period, 88, 2002, 2012, one time entire crop loss, 3 time entire standing crop loss, loss of stored seeds, seed bed erosion, goat loss, pond loss, poultry loss, pond loss. This type of the data can be collected from the panchayat level, from the village household level. And we can understand the mind of the people. And then we can, our policy and planning can be very, very effective. So this can be used under the, what I would like to use under the integrated and comprehensive assessment. I would like to give you example here, Indian case study of dry area. We did for biophysical vulnerability in Rajasthan. Collected data, monsoon rainfall variability, annual rainfall, land use data, soil fertility data, land capability data, slope data, surface water data, groundwater data, irrigation, and then you see we combined here through the score using the geographic information system. This map looks simple, but it can provide a very great input to the planners, local level decision makers. They can understand that biophysical point of view, where we have high vulnerability, where we have moderate vulnerability, where we have low vulnerability. So what they will do? They will take up the high vulnerability area for resilience. So, prioritizing the problem. So we can do also for human, we can take literacy, we can take their productive system, we can take their income, all combining together. Also we can have such type of the index and map. This you see, this is a map of the Himachal Himalaya, and we did using the satellite data, satellite information, we tried to analyze the snow aerial change in the snow cover, and you can see through this what we are getting. We have more changes in the eastern side in comparison to western side. So this side may be taken up first. So this way we can improve our understanding. Here you can see like a glacier lakes are many in Himalayan area, and these lakes are very, very important. Sometimes burst these lakes. What it is known as very important phenomena, you will remember, GLOF, Glacier Lake Outburst Flood. You know what happened, Parachute, and particularly Himachal Pradesh and Sikkim. These two states are very, very vulnerable, and these two governments should take care of this very important phenomena. You see, we did the mapping of geohazards along the river Spiti and Satluj after Pari Chu, this globe. We did, between Sumdo and Poong, between section Poong to Kharo, and from Kharo to Jakri. These maps are based on, historical data. We try to analyze the past, occurrence of the different type of the hazards. And, this is a multi-hazard, because they have also the rockfall, they have erosion, they have landslides, different type of hazards they have created. You see, in this map, potential danger of glacier lakes, where we have the more, 22 glacier lakes, and where we have the more potential, where we have more probability. So, a prevention is better than cure. It is said prevention is better than cure. Such mapping can help us, not only policymakers, but community, to think that where we have more danger. I would like to put before you a very important initiative taken after the mapping neighborhood in Uttarakhand, Mani. That is a very important program. And after the Kedarnath tragedy of 2013, I think, it is 2013, what happened, and they started mapping neighborhood. People, community can map that where we have the more, high altitude area, high slopey area, high, eroded area, where we have the more, danger area. We should develop culture of prevention through mapping neighborhood, also, using a student, college student, school students can be involved in this process, mapping the neighborhood area. They can assign, we can assign the work that, you prepare, and they will have an interest. In this way, I think community can participate in this process, and it will be very helpful for the planners. This should be, and I would like to extend going even for assigning some marks also on that, because if you are assigning some marks, maybe 10 marks on such type of the work, I think people will take a lot of interest. You see, we did for the Uttarakhand, long back, a big earthquake occurred in Uttarakhand area, and here also the multiple risk assessment. This is a multiple mapping of, we did for the landslide risk assessment, flood risk assessment, avalanche risk assessment, and then we combine together, where we have the high risk area combining in Uttarakhand, generally along the Gangotri, Gaumukh, going, where we'll have the more, so some precautionary measures can be taken. You see here intensity map. Hope you will remember during the Phalin, how the science and technology can play a very important role. Now through the gravity of the problem can be shown through the map. Magnitude of the problem can be shown through map. You see here that where we have the more high intensity rainfall during the Phalin, so accordingly policymakers can take the precautionary measures. If we can have, if any cyclone is coming, tsunami is coming, and if we can prepare such type of the map about the rainfall pattern, where we will have the cyclone-induced rainfall and where we will have more intensity, where real, I think people can take precautionary measures. So the making community have to play a very important role for disaster resilience building. Here I can tell. You see, the flooding is a big problem in northern India, particularly means monsoon time. You see this. Indus, to Brahmaputra, all red. And these are the area where very high density population of the world. Many area we have the more than 1,000, 1,200 people per square kilometer. Very high densely populated area of the world. And we have a very big problem of flooding during the monsoon time. We have to identify local knowledge. During my childhood, I saw we had one crop, it is known as sati. A type of rice variety only, produced in 60 days. So before flood come, people used to harvest and they have some livelihood to eat during the monsoon time. But now what happened? Due to the new variety, all gone. I think we have to identify. Bamboo cultivation, we have a big makhana area, but we are not able to do the processing. What we have to do, government has to take this during the flood area, bamboo cultivation, the paper industry can be, established and lot of employment can be generated. Then, between Muzaffarpur to Darbhanga, this is the makhana. No processing. If we can do processing, a lot of the income can be generating activity can be generated local level, and we can improve the livelihood, and livelihood means resilience building to the people. See, we did the mapping of the flood prone areas. Here, remote sensing and GIS, Ram Ganga basin, in UP area. We did the flood zoning maps, particularly for, number of the villages affected, number of area affected. Here we combine remote sensing and the census data. All village maps. Such maps can be used by the planners and decision makers for relief operation. Urban risk mapping is a very, very important, and we did particularly here land surface temperature, NDVI analysis, NDV built up area analysis, and through this it is possible to link with the urban heat islands. Urban heat island, can be combined with the more diseases. Urban heat island, air pollution, all in combination can be analyzed, and a very important study for the urban planners and decision makers. So we have taken the Mumbai, Delhi and Calcutta. Few PhD students are working on that, and we try to analyze such type of the risk mapping. Such risk mapping, what I would like to argue, that our urban planners and decision makers must use such type of the maps for their planning, for their prospective plan. You see, this we prepare for the urban heat island for Delhi. I have taken the data of thermal power plants, industrial area, traffic modes and vegetation cover. As you know, we have a very substantial improvement in Delhi, particularly the vegetation cover. Combining together, here you can see where we have the low heat islands, moderate heat island, high heat line, very high heat island. And you can find also relation with diseases. If you will analyze the dispensary data of diseases, recently, Government of India released a very important document that is health, mortality and disease data, and we find lot of non-communicable diseases, non-communicable air pollution induced diseases, and air pollution means the heat islands and all. Dear colleague, I would like to take one important example of the multi-hazard mapping, and this one is a very important, where you can combine, we have typhoon, landslide, flood, storm. One very example, what we can do hazard identification and data acquisition, data processing and database creation, data manipulation, data exporting, finalization and publication. What are the usage of multi-hazard maps? Hazard and risk identification, emergency response. Maps are cartographically simple with information enabling the local official to make quick and very appropriate responses, especially during the emergency. Maps helps to identify, prioritize and allocate resources. I have shown you the map of like this flood map, where the villages are there. In the previous few years, when disaster occurred, media reported that 100,000 people died because they had no idea. Now through geospatial technology, we have knowledge of all locality, every tola, every hamlets, and we can forecast in a better way. This can be also used in our local development planning. Particularly, I would like to hear one case study, I would like to put before you. P. Khatsu and C.J. Van Weston, they have done for Kohima town. New Market, Midland Hospital Colony Ward, they have taken historical analysis, mapping, survey they have done, questionnaire combination with elements at risk inventory to derive the multi-hazard maps. And they use 3 methods of landscape mapping, landslides mapping, interpretation of satellite imagery, walk-over survey, and analysis of historical data, as I also presented for Himachal Pradesh, some historical. In order to prepare the fire hazard map, the study area they have done the multi-criteria evaluation analysis. You can use this under GIS framework is very, very important available, and they have taken criteria of building typology, building material, space between two buildings, distance from the road, distance from the fire service station. Then in their study 3 generic earthquake scenario are assumed, and after deriving the individual hazards, they were combined into the multi-hazard map and ArcGIS framework. Here you can see they have prepared for the estimated distribution of earthquake damage in case of the earthquake with local intensity of 9. So what will happen? So far in India we have more than 8, you can see intensity, 3 big earthquake occurred in the past. Landslides hazard assessment, they did here. Various type of methods exist for landslide hazard, like they did the inventory, they did the analysis, statistical methods, deterministic methods. The method adopted for landslide hazard in their study is bivariate statistical methods, and they give the value, parameters, maps were done, and what are the parameters they have taken? Land use, geology, geomorphology, slope steepness, slope direction, distance to falls in lineament, drainage distance, density, distance to roads. Here you can see landslide susceptibility melt, where we have the high, low, moderate, and you can find here a very close relationship between land use and road construction also. In Himalaya, what happened? See in Uttarakhand area, before, if you say the map of before 1962 and after the 1962, you can find a lot after 1962, because after the China war, in 62, we constructed a lot of roads. So one can see a very close relationship between the road construction and, but landslide also the natural also. Even where there is no rate, also you can find the landslides in the high Himalaya area. So fire, they have taken another important, this fire hazard map, and for that, they have given the weight value from 1 to 10, and as you know, I already discussed the building type, the distance between the two buildings, from the road, because fire the vehicles, how it can come. Now you see we have the such gully in Chandni Chowk area where fire, vehicle can't enter. And that is why my suggestion will be, you rehabilitate such people to some area, give some land and make some space so that fire vehicles and other can enter. These are the aspect, should be taken. Here you see different type of the fire hazard category, very high fire, a moderate, low fire, number of buildings, identified. So, planners maker can take such type of the data. And how they can use this vast manpower available in our country? If you can involve the university, if you can involve the colleges, community, then we can take such type of the work. You see forest susceptibility map here mentioned by these two very important work done by this for the Kohima. And so here you can see what they have done. They are identified where we have the all three earthquake, landslides and fire, 187 buildings. Where we have only 2 earthquake and landslide, 127 buildings. Earthquake and fire, 246 buildings. Landslides, fire, 187 buildings. You see, such simple exercise, but this can be done by our student. And so they have done combining all. They use 3 methods for landside mapping, interpretation of satellite imagery, walkover and all. And now here you see this multi-hazard map of Kohima town. And they have done the such type of the map we need for every city. And it is possible if you can involve the local college, local university. Here you can see wards, New Market, Middle Ward, Hospital Colony, what are the different type of building, what type of the multi-hazard exist, very easy way to understand. So I would like to conclude now that the particular location and regions are exposed to multiple hazards, like a Kohima. I give an example, like a Delhi. We are exposed to flood, we are exposed to earthquake also. So, multi-hazard mapping can be done. We are exposed to the fire, but compare the Karnat Place area and compare Chandni Chowk. We do not have the similar type of the fire vulnerability, both places. So that is why multi-hazard mapping could play a great role in identifying the level of disaster risk. Generation and exposure of vulnerability data must go beyond the physical aspects and incorporate key marker of socio-economic vulnerability and resilience. So that is why the building structure, the materials of building, very, very important. The economic condition of the people living in that building, that is also very important. Identify mechanism and opportunity to improve exposure databases. Here, uniform standards, and here I would like to suggest that UNISDR, GFDRR, ICSU, IAP, these international agencies, and Indian context, maybe NDMA, NIDM, they should develop such type of the uniform standard. It is vital to encourage cross-disciplinary, cross-organizational, cross-governmental and private sector partnership to convert exposure and vulnerability useful action. Finally, I would like to put before you this disaster risk mapping using geospatial technology and approach towards science policy interface. Here you can see this, the human geoscience approach, socioeconomic exposure, biophysical, community knowledge, livelihood, and all can be examined through health impact assessment, environmental impact assessment. This can be, passed to the policy makers, NGOs, local community leaders, self-help groups, geoscientists, all can work together for achieving disaster resilience by 2030. Don't wait for 2080, but mid-term plan we can prepare what we can achieve in the 2020, what we can in 2025. So, thank you very much. Disaster risk mapping is a tool for enabling policy and community response capability. Thank you very much.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a productive session. Dear friends, you can give your feedbacks for this lecture at info.cec@nic.in. We would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.